Hello and welcome to the latest in my line of videos about the Savage Worlds rule set for Fantasy Grounds 2. Today I shall be talking about the new features that will be in version 3.4 of the Savage Worlds rule set. At the time of recording I'm using build 11. This is not the final build. It hopefully is close to the final build, subject to any further bugs that are discovered. The 3.4 version of the Savage Worlds rule set incorporates much of the functionality that has been added to the base rule sets for Fantasy Grounds, and also incorporates a selection of the features from Akil's Savage Worlds features improvements. Not all the functionality of that extension is in this current version, just the ones that are the most stable and also work with the other added incorporations. The implementation of most of Akil's features is intended over the next couple of versions. It's going to be a migratory process. As you can see, the actual rule set itself hasn't changed that much. As you can see, the appearance of the rule set hasn't changed dramatically since the last build. The only real noticeable difference is that the mod button is no longer on the sidebar. This has been incorporated into the library. So to add modules from now on, you open up the library and there's a module activation button. The module activation window itself has been subtly changed in that now each module has its own line. This basically gives much more space for titles and information. You can, using the new resizing options, you can resize the windows. This window only scrolls downwards, but other windows will have both the side and the bottom. So we can scroll it down to get a little more room, and then we can use the scroll bar, a new feature in this rule set, to move the module activation up and down. Of course, the mouse wheel still works. All other functionality is exactly the same about opening and closing the books, and about applying auto loading or denying access. So module activation. The next change I want to go over is the combat tracker. So if we click on the initiative button there, what we see here is the combat tracker, and again, if you're very eagle-eyed, you may well notice that the mini button is missing. This is due to an extra option in the preferences. In 3.4, the GM has control over whether the players can open up the initiative and the chase tools themselves. If the mini button is not there, then the players will have an initiative and chase button on their sidebars, and therefore the GM does not need to share the combat tracker out. If you want to have control over the combat tracker so that you can choose when the players can see it, then all you would do is you go into preferences, you will scroll down to mini tracker host controls, and as you can see at the moment, host does not control. So on the players, they'll have an initiative and a chase button. If I turn that on, what will happen on the player screen, obviously we can't see it here, is the init and the chase button will vanish, but on the combat tracker the mini sheet button comes back, so the option to share it with the players is now available. Then there's a new extra menu button on the combat tracker. As you can see here, when you highlight over it, it says right click on me. If you right click on it, it adds quite a bit of functionality. You've got the option to minimize it, clear the entire tracker, just automatically remove all the NPCs, so it's just got the players in it. Add PCs, this will automatically add all the PCs to the combat tracker. Remove PCs will just remove the PCs from the combat tracker. And add all allies. This button here will add any allies that have been added to players' character sheets into the combat tracker. So you're basically a quick way to populate the combat tracker. You would right mouse button on menu, you'd go add PCs, add all allies. Then all you would do is add the personalities either by dragging them in individually, or if you've set up a combat encounter, you would just use the button there to add all the NPCs automatically to the combat tracker. Well, staying on the combat tracker, one of the extra features that's been added in is the fact that basically any number typed into the wound bar now will automatically be a negative number. Moving on, if we go into the character sheet, I'll fire up Mr. Demo. Certain weapons can have a higher critical range than rolling a 1 on the skill. For example, here we've got a shotgun. So what we're going to do is this shotgun needs to have a critical range of 1 to 2. So all we'll do is basically we will right mouse button on the weapon type. There's an extra button down here for the fumble range, and you can choose that whether you fumble on a 1, 2 or 3. You just change it to a 2, and you can see now the shotgun will critically fail on a 1 or a 2. It will basically report that the trait roll was a natural 2. There have been some other subtle changes on the character sheet. The armor tab has been removed from the front page. It's now part of the inventory tab, and the inventory itself has been organized into tabs. You have mundane items, a weapons tab, armors tab, a vehicles tab, and a notes tab. So what I'll do is if I go into the inventory, I'll go into the Hell on Earth Player's Guide, which hopefully will be released around the same time as 3.4. If I go down to the gear list, this has been updated to completely support 3.4, so it has drag and drop inventory items. So we'll add a can of Dr. Pepper, we'll go down and add a Ghost Rock battery, a Geiger counter. Each of these hopefully has also got a description, so if I click on the Ghost Rock battery, you can actually see there are the rules for that particular item, if it has extra rules in the rule set. If they're not, they would just be blank, but as you can see here, each of these items has the extra rolls attached. So if we add a boomerang to the character sheet, we'll drag and drop the boomerang on, and if we click on the button here, there's all the stats for the boomerang. What also has been added is a notes tab, and this happens on armor and weaponry. So if you click on the notes tab, it will actually show any notes for that weapon. So as you know, sometimes in the rule sets it says see the notes. Well, now the notes will actually be attached to the weapon. If you'd add a D12 to a stat now, the extra box doesn't appear. This happens on personalities as well as characters. So if we the extra box doesn't appear, which obviously means the NPC sheet gives you a little more room. What we can do is we can right mouse button, go into the bonuses, and you can see there's an extra box up here that lets you add the old +1 +2 to the strength modifier. So if we roll that now, it will do a D12 +2 strength as well as the wild die. Likewise, the other bonuses that might be coming from other edges or anything else can still be added as normal. It's just the strength modifier has been added, trait modifier I should say, has been added in for when you want to add a D12. Likewise, if we go to skills, this character here happens to be very skilled in fighting. We'll give him a D10 in fighting, and for some reason he's got some edge or some weapon or cybernetics. I do believe Triple Ace's cybernetic rules let you change the wild die on specific skills. So instead of having a D6 wild die, he has a D8. So all you do is holding down Alt on the keyboard, drag and drop the new dice you want on to the wild die. As you can see there now, it shows a D10 and in brackets a D8. So now when I pick it up to roll, it shows a D10 and D8, and it will only be for that skill. If I add another skill in for shooting, for argument's sake, but add that in, as you can see, that is still a D10 and a D6, whereas that is a D10 and a D8. One of the extra features is languages. If we turn the language option on, what happens is a extra icon is added to the sidebar. In here, the GM is allowed to create new languages. So we'll create English, French, Spanish. Obviously, this is a modern game on. Let's have a bit of Latin for fun. So basically the GM can create any number of languages. He can allow the players to see the languages, which this means he can create languages the players can't select. So that's the players won't be able to see that language, but they can see all the others. If we go back to the player character sheet, the players will now be able to open up the language button. They will come down to their notes and they can drag and drop that this guy can speak English and Latin. When the GM wants to have a character type something, he can pick the drop down on what language it's in, press return. As you can see here, the GM's talking in Draconic. Now, if the players do not have the language that you have selected here, they will not actually see the words in English on the screen, or whatever language you typed it in, obviously. They will see random graphic characters. Additionally, on skills, unskilled is automatically added to the character sheet. Adding portraits to plays is much easier now. You can basically, as a GM, bring up the images and you literally just drag it and drop it. You close it, reopen it, and you can see the portrait has been applied. Likewise, you can change the player portrait on the character sheet like so. Also, if the GM wants to talk as a character, they can click on the speech button just like they can on an NPC. Okay, so I've populated Mr. Demo a little more here. We've given him some bennies and we give him basic skills. He's now armed with a chainsaw. So I can show off the functionality of the mini sheet. So if we open up the mini sheet, at the moment you can see that Mr. Demo, there's his wounds, his fatigue, his bennies and everything else, and his base stats have been added. Now if we go to the skills tab, if you click on the little stars that are in the top corner of the skills, it will add that particular skill to the mini sheet. All very useful. Likewise, if you click on the attacks button, this adds another box, which again, if you activate the weapons, will add the weapons to the mini sheet. So as you can see there, it gets quite impressive. So now basically I don't need the main sheet open at all. I can just have my mini sheet there, and when asked to make skill checks or fighting checks, ironically, which was the same in both cases, as you can see there, you can do it all from the mini sheet. Now attacks will actually include powers as well. When using skills that give you extra skill dice, for example, Mr. Demo is going to fire a fully automatic machine gun, or it could be doing a bolt casting. When you roll the dice now, it will only show the best of the results. So in this case here, it will show you the 3 rolls. So there it shows you that one of the D4 was a 3, the D4 was a 3, and the final one, it shows the wild die because that was higher than the natural roll, but it will also point out that the trait roll was a natural 1. So basically you don't have to sit here and work out which are the best rolls. It's completely automated into the dice rolling. We've just added in a machine gun with a rate of fire of 3, so when Mr. Demo opens fire, you can still just let's actually give him some ammo. You could still expend single bullets like you could before, but for added functionality, let me put the demo back. If you right mouse button on the ammo, there's a use ammo button. If you select that, you can select to do a single shot, double tap, burst fire, or do fully automatic. And every time, and as you can see there, it will fire a 9-shot burst, but if I keep left clicking, it will just expend single rounds of ammunition. On inventory, again, it's one I can't show with only running as the GM, but players can actually share inventory items between each other, a bit like you can share adventure decks. If you've got an item on your sheet, you can literally just pick it up and you would drop it on a character's portrait and it would add to them. If you had a stack of items you wanted to transfer, you hold down the control key. This button on the character sheet, when clicked, gives you a character summary. It lists how many attribute upgrades the character's had, how many skill points, how many skills it's got, what rank it is, how many edges, how much experience and hindrances. This is very useful when you're starting out a campaign and you're creating a character in Fantasy Grounds 2. It's a good way of checking that the character is legal and all your points add up correctly. Likewise, if you're creating pre-gens as a GM or something like that, it gives you an indication that you've kept the characters all balanced. 3 extra icons appear to the left of the modifier box. These are auto modifiers that are applied. The top one is an auto modifier for wounds, the middle one is for fatigue, and the bottom one is for encumbrance. You can turn them individually off and on by clicking on them there. The GM can turn them on or off control wise there. As I say, they're automatically applied to any roll. So if we give this character 2 wounds and then make him make a fighting attack, the modifier is automatically added. If we give him a point of fatigue as well and then make him make a fighting attack, you can now see it's at -3. Didn't stop it doing much problem there. If we go over to the inventory and give him an extra item, say a very heavy object with a weight of 40 pounds, that will imply a -1 encumbrance penalty. So if we now make him make a strength check, you can see that he's now got 2 wounds, 1 fatigue and 1 encumbrance point. All very useful. This functionality is not applied to NPCs, so if an NPC has wounds on the combat tracker, these will not be auto applied. On the PC tab, there is an extra button down here that actually gives you the option to export your character as an XML file, so you can easily create a character and export it off for a GM to import into their campaign. An extra command's been added to the slash list of commands. If you type slash DMG, then for example 4D4 plus 2, and then give it a description of what it is, it will automatically roll the dice, exploding as required. This is rather useful when obviously you just need to roll damage on the fly. Additional functionality added in is you can turn players into NPCs and NPCs into players. Very useful for people who are creating modules. It allows you to create pre-gens as personalities in the module, and then when the GM who's actually going to run the game starts it, they can just drag the players straight out onto the character sheet. Well, I hope you found this video informative, and now when 3.4 is released, you'll have a better idea of how to use the newer features. Until next time, goodbye.